You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network. For more quality options programs, visit www.theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app, available in iTunes and on Google Play. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com.
And now, it's time for the show that breaks down the options market, from unusual activity alerts to market analysis, strategy overviews, listener questions, and much more. If it involves puts and calls, then our all-star panel will break it down. It's time to hit the option block with your host, Mark Longo from the Options Insider Media Group, and co-hosts Uncle Mike Tosaw from RCM Asset Management, Andrew the Rock Lobster Giovinazzi from OptionPit.com, and Mark the Greasy Meatball Sebastian from OptionPit.com. And now, get ready to hit the option block.
All right, everybody. That rockin' tune means it's time, once again, for a little show we like to call around here, the option block. A little bit of options with some wisdom, some analysis, some education. Mix it all together with your questions, some strategery, peering into the future, a whole bunch of unusual activity. And you have, yes, indeed, the heady brew that is the option block. My name is Mark Longo from the old OptionsInsider.com, as well as, of course, from the ever-exciting Options Insider Radio Network. You can get at us a whole bunch of different ways. You can just stream the show via our website or, of course, iTunes or Stitcher. You can, of course, listen to it live if you're hardcore. Get a nice little bonus live stream there every Monday and Thursday, 3 p.m. Central, 4 p.m. Eastern, via Mixlr, MIXLR. And, of course, you can always, if you want to upgrade to the full kit and caboodle, you can upgrade to our full network that is available pretty much wherever you find your finer podcast programs. So your iTunes, your Stitchers, TuneIns, Googles, not on SoundCloud, but we're on pretty much all the rest. So search for it there, grab it. You can also always go to our website, grab the RSS feed of the shows you like, including the network, and put them in your podcast player of choice. We don't judge. However you want to listen is fine with us. And of course, hit us up, questions, comments, insights, pearls of wisdom. We love them all. You guys know how to find us. All right, and joining me on the old program today, let's go around the horn. Who we got joining us here on the old all-star panel today? Let's start off with the man with a newly pensive picture on his Skype window. Somehow, I guess he's just deep in thought. He is the greasiest of meatballs, Mr. Mark Sebastian from OptionPit.com. By way of Carmen Line, Mr. Meatball, welcome back to the show. And what's with the deep thought, sir?
Oh, nothing. I was just reading some J.D. Salinger and decided to take a picture. Nothing like trading and my copy of Catcher in the Rye.
There you go. A little deep thought, a little ennui out there. Just pondering the universe, a little sullen, a little sad, a little open to deep thoughts. We like it here. I'll have to screenshot this and put it in the show notes. I think our listeners will find it interesting. All right, and also joining us, one over the dial from him, we hop on over to a fun little place we call St. Charles, where we are joined by none other than Uncle Mike Tosaw from RCM Wealth Advisors. Uncle Mike, welcome back to the program. What's up with you? No deeply pensive picture today, sir?
That would involve me trying to figure out how to work this computer thing, and that's just something that scares me, quite frankly.
All right, and last but not least, we got some banging, some smashing going on in the background. So that can only mean one thing. We are joined from someone who sounds like he's in a pool house. It must be Mr. Tubby, a.k.a. Matt Benson, the options man about town these days. And that town extends all the way down to Georgia and then back up here to Chicago as well. Mr. Tubby, how you doing there, sir, in the pool house?
I'm doing fantastic. I'm in the pool house. I am not eating chips. It's probably Mark Sebastian.
Something is breaking up over there. So we'll see if we can get Mr. Tubby sorted out over there. Meanwhile, let's kick things off with the trading block.
It's time to break down the latest topics, trades, and trends in the world of options. It's time for the trading block.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Trading Block. Like the name implies, this is indeed the portion of the program where we break down a whole bunch of things, including what was moving, shaking, catching our eye here in today's activity. A bit of green on the old screen today, so no one's upset, no one's concerned about missiles or fire and fury or floods and WTI prices. All that apparently is behind us because the screens are pretty much all green today. Most of the major indices, S&P up about 0.6%. The tech-heavy NASDAQ up nearly a full percentage point, so leading the charge to the north, and then ever the laggard, the Dow, only up about 0.33%. And of course, all this green on the screen means red in the vol space, fixed cash, taking on the chin, off about 0.6 of a handle. Hovering shy of the 11 handle these days, about 1064, 1065 or so, somewhere in that range. So if you were a vol bull, thought we were in a new regime of higher volatility this week, not so much. We'll see how that plays out. So I got another day before the old vol views. We'll see how that plays out and impacts all of our predictions. But let's go back in the same order. We'll start with you, Mr. Meatball, sir. A lot going on today. What caught your eye in today's Sea of Green?
Think about it. We did a bombing run right next to North Korea and rallied on it. Seems like the half-life on Korea fears seem to be ending. I think the president has now that he's been debanned has maybe stopped being so, let's say, clumsy with the words. And we economically, GDP was great yesterday. And the big thing is yesterday we broke the 50-day moving average that had been such a ceiling for the market, and broke it, got well above it, and then today we get follow through. So I wouldn't be shocked if we saw a test of the ATH, that we might get a best day ever to sell sometime in the next couple of days. Not a lot of reason. I'm certain nobody's going to be going short over the long weekend. Maybe some people that are long get out, so we could maybe get a little softer tomorrow. But today, everything I'm looking at, the Russell was really strong. The NASDAQ nearly as strong as the Russell, and then so on. So just kind of a green bullish day all around.
A little horning in on Uncle Mike's territory. Then never been a better time to sell. Sometime, perhaps soon. Uncle Mike, what say you to that, sir? Another bull piling into your territory, stealing your catchphrase there.
Hey, bulls are always welcome. We're happy people because the market always goes up, right? What I liked about today's market was just I'll hone in on what Mark said. It was kind of an across-the-board rally. The only of the XLs, the only one that's really doing significantly anything more than the others, you could say the healthcare sector. But other than that, it's pretty across the board in terms of the percentage of increase of what we had today. We continue to see a rally in the somewhat shiny stuff, silver. We're above 1660 now. And just as a little bit of a hook, I will be talking a little bit about the silver trade in the next coming weeks. I have been doing some stuff on that a little bit. Not the big one, but the one that I thought that was going to be boring and been doing stuff. But nonetheless, you will hear from me about silver as per the host's request on this show. So it was just an across-the-board rally today. It's a fun day, and couldn't quite make all-time highs, but we're getting there, and maybe I'll get to say my catchphrase on Tuesday.
I think you're legally obligated if you appear on this show and you discuss trades that you have to do stuff with those trades. That is your requirement. So if you put on a collar for 2 years, you got to do stuff within that 2 years. So I'm glad to hear that. Perhaps some stuff is coming up there on the old silver collar. Speaking of stuff, we got some names popping off after the bell. We'll get to those in a bit, but first, earnings season not done yet, listeners. Still got a few gasps of life left in there. But before we do that, let's go back to the pool house. I think the tubster has sorted out the various pool chemicals that were falling on his head, and now he's good. Mr. Tubby, what caught your eye in today's activity, sir?
A lot of retail looks like it's getting a little healthy. Certainly, Amazon has looked like it found a bottom somewhere at 945 there. But I'm kind of with Mark looking at some of this stuff. I think the way you've seen stocks like Biogen and Amazon with just huge moves over the last 2 to 3 days. I think you will see some sort of sell-off, or at least nothing major, but people are going to take some profits off of what they've had the last 3 or 4 days in this rally. Probably after a pop in unemployment tomorrow morning, and then everyone's gone. New York's half empty anyway this time of year.
Yeah, these are not exactly dense times for the markets. So people heading out, of course, we have the Labor Day weekend coming up on Monday here in the States, listeners. So no option block first off the point off on Monday. Unfortunately, sad face there, but markets are closed. Can't really talk about much on the old show. You know, got to give the guys a little bit of some fun time to head out and have some fun as well. But we'll be back a week from now, next Thursday. So never you fear with more option block goodness. But yeah, otherwise it's getting kind of thin and light out there. Most people heading out for the last kind of major weekend of the summer, if indeed your kids haven't already gone back to school, and they're going back probably pretty soon. So gotta get one last hurrah in there before they go. Speaking of last hurrahs, kind of got a bit of a last hurrah here for the old earnings season as well. One more name on the old docket. Actually, there are a few, but there's a name you guys actually watch and trade, and you guys have written into us about before. We talked about many times on the show in the past. This is good old Lululemon, ticker symbol LU. They of the invisible yoga pants fame / infamy. And they were reporting after the bell today. They closed right around 57.5. They were pricing in a pretty hefty, pretty juicy straddle, about nearly $7, about $6.75, so right around 12%. So they were pricing in some juice. I guess the invisible yoga pants scene is a little bit more juicy than perhaps it was, pun intended, has been in the past. So far, they're moving a bit in the after hours, though perhaps not quite as much as they were pricing in. They're up about $4 and change here. So right about a little over 7%. So a good move, but not quite the nearly $7 they were pricing in. So if you're out there loading up on some premium, you need a little bit more juice to make you happy. If you're premium selling, you're doing all right so far. You're not smiling all the way to the bank, but you're not crying a river either. So we'll keep an eye on that one. Lulu, one of the last big names popping off. You guys are trading it. Let us know if you're listening and what you're up to out there. I don't know, Mr. Meatball, have you been slinging any Lulu or any of your hardcores in your pit crew over there in the pit chat? Any of them diving into some Lulu these days?
You know, it's hard for me to trade stocks that I have personal feelings about. So, like, you know,
that's why I went to you first. I know you love your Lulu.
So everybody knows how I feel about a few stocks. Lulu was a name that I really liked and now do not. And I think that I'm surprised, but they beat earnings. Apparently they're starting to improve some of their issues, but you know, they had their problems were deeper than just the see-through pants. They had problems with competition. They had problems with styling. Seems like they're starting to sort some of that out. But you know, looks like a nice little earnings announcement for Lululemon. And there was, you know, Matt can tell you more because he was really following along with Lulu today. But apparently the consensus was wrong, right, Matt?
Well, the consensus on Twitter sure as heck looked negative towards the end of the day. But there was some big call activity. I don't know if we talked about it on the show or not last week. Someone bought some like 10,000 AAPL 65 calls. So I kind of jumped that trend a little bit. Mark and I spoke just before we started the call, and I said, probably should have maybe looked at some short-term puts, but my God, they were expensive, like you mentioned, Mark, long ago. So I just kind of covered my eyes and waited for the results, and it looks good. So we'll probably be looking to take that position off tomorrow morning at some point as well before the weekend.
Yeah, it was an interesting and very active day, obviously, out there for good old Lulu. This is a name that does about 14,000 contracts a day. Today, doing about 80,000 and change, so fairly active. No real consensus in terms of the flow on one side of the fence or the other. Pretty much about 1-to-1 puts over calls, which is kind of interesting. Usually you see a little bit of a bias in these kinds of things. Today, just a surge of flow pretty much across the board. So no one lining up on puts, no one lining up on calls. We'll see, obviously, how that continues to play out here in the after hours. Always interesting to note, too, these things were pretty much active across. Someone traded 14 of the SEP 80s today. These go out tomorrow, listeners. The 80 handle. Someone traded a 14 lot of those bad boys. So we'll see. We'll see how all of this paper This frenzy of invisible paper continues to play out as we keep an eye on it through the show. Meanwhile, let's keep on rolling into what else caught our eye on the unusual side of the fence today. It is time to open up the Odd Block.
It's time to break down the most interesting, unusual, and downright questionable options activity that's been identified by theoptionsinsider.com. It's time for the Odd Block.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Odd Block, the portion of the show where we break down the weird, the wild, the wondrous, the whimsical, all of the W adjectives listed above paper that was catching our collective eyes today. We're going to kick things off in the land of the perpetual upside, at least these days. Tesla up another almost 1% again today, nearly 3 handles. And yet a little bit, actually surprisingly quiet day on the catastrophe put front. Only 37 of these Jan 2019 50s trading today. Only 37. It sounds so crazy to say that, yet this name has, and this strike has done lots of paper since we first noticed it and uncovered it a few months ago, and it continues to grow. In fact, open interest, I believe that's pretty much an all-time high, or pretty close to it. 28,817 of these catastrophe puts continue to open up. Worth noting as well, there's about 13,000 and change. So about that number is pretty much unched since last week of the Jan 2019 par puts, the 100 puts. So if there was a ratio going up, it is heavily skewed in favor of these 50s. So yeah, these 50s continue to print, continue to trade. A little small today. It is worth noting as well, the 100s traded 31 today, so maybe a bit of a vertical. The 50s and 100s just a straight up vertical out there. Either way, these 100s just continue to defy logic, defy reason, defy all judgments to the contrary, and continue to print and do so in decent size. I know you guys have hit us up before. If you have your own ideas why these things continue to print, who's up to them and what they're up for, hit us up. We do love to hear we've heard quite a few tinfoil hats. I'm sure you guys have some of your own. Some of the tinfoil hat ones are kind of the most fun sometimes. Let's move on we're going to do a couple of reviews today in the old Odd Block. Actually, let's keep it in the Tesla land for a minute, because you guys will remember back almost a month ago, back on the 3rd here on this show, we profiled an interesting strangle. Someone came in and loaded up on the March 250 470 strangle. Strangle, of course, listeners, the calls and the puts trading, selling or buying. In this case, paper was buying. They bought it 400 times. They paid nearly $18, $17.90 to buy this thing 400 times. Is a fairly wide strike. You're talking over 100 handles to the downside, and more so on 120 or so on the upside. And that was around the time. It was around this price when they put it on about a month ago. And we like to keep an eye on these things. We mark these things, say, hey, we're going to check them up again. You guys ask us about them, so we thought we'd check in on this one again, see how our friend out here in Strangle Land is doing. As you could imagine, this stock is pretty much right around where it was when he put it on a month or so later. So you guys can do the math on the time decay front. A month on long premium on a long strangle with the underlying effectively unched. Not exactly a great trade. This is a longer term trade, so it's not going to get annihilated by time decay. But you can see here, it still does hurt. This name right now, like I said, if he wanted to close it out right now, sell out this long premium strangle, he could sell it out for about $16. So he's lost nearly $2 already on this thing, which, doesn't sound like a lot, but then on 400 lot, that's about 80 grand. So it does start to add up. So all you guys out there who are thinking, time decay doesn't really hurt you, or perhaps if you get a little bit longer into March of next year, you could survive a lot of that. He's still got a lot of meat on the bone, don't get me wrong, but it does hurt. That $2 or so is going to see now he needs even more movement to really make that up, which is one of the reasons why we said these kind of long premium set it and forget it type trades, whether they're strangles or straddles or whatever they may be, they're a challenge in the long run unless you got some aggressive. And this guy could be scalping gamma. He's had some opportunities, so that is potential there. He could be doing that, in which case he could be doing better than this. But just on the option side alone, that is a challenge. I don't know, Mr. Meatball. Maybe we'll toss it to you. Any thoughts here on our friend who kind of shooting for the moon out there in Tesla, and so far at least getting no joy here. Tesla pretty much almost effectively unched when he put it on about a month ago.
Wait a minute. So are you telling me that somebody had astronomical expectations of an underlying called Tesla? I find that hard to believe. I find that shocking. Yeah, when you need a move and you don't get it, then this is the type of stuff that'll happen. You're just in it just becomes dead money. And in this case, that Tesla strangle still is dead money. Now it's got time. It's interesting that they're basically saying it's not staying here. It's either going to make a big move lower or a big move higher. But right now, this ain't looking like a winner right now.
No, and of course, every day that goes by, our old friend Mr. Schlesinger used to say the options die a little every day, and these double leggers die in twice as much in a single day. I don't know, Mr. Tubster, you like a good Tesla every now and then. I'm not sure if you're trading anything out there right now, but what are your thoughts on our friend here swinging for the fence? I'm not sure if you were on the show when we were talking about this last time, but what are your thoughts on our friend here swinging for the fence in Tesla? And so far, at least, that fence has pretty much not moved in about a month.
Yeah, he's still got a lot of time left here. You've got 2 earnings releases before that March date. There's so much that comes out of this company. If you look back at the last 3 months predating the earnings, the stock's had about a $70 move. It seems to me I was playing something right around an earnings report in April, I think, maybe May. And the stock went from 300 to 245. And since then, it's up $130. I don't mind the positioning on it at all. I actually kind of like it. It hasn't going to decay much, and it's not going to probably until you get into Jan. You're still going to have an earnings report in February before that. So I think it's a good position. I like it.
Oh, you're liking it. You're feeling the love, even though he's feeling a little bit of the heat now. You're right. He still has a lot of time to go, but it is nice to sometimes check in on these bad boys and see just how these trades, we profile them. We profile so many trades. Sometimes it kind of just goes into the ether. We like to keep an eye on some of these and bring them back for you guys to sink your claws or your teeth into yet again. And sometimes to give them their props. Sometimes they do well. And in this case, he's, as Tubby said, he's still got time, but so far at least, ain't looking too good right now. But he's got time, a couple of earning cycles. We all know Tesla can move. And judging by what we just profiled a little while ago, those 50 puts, 250 seems comparatively sane by comparison on the downside. So we'll keep an eye on that bad boy. Meanwhile, we'll turn it into another, let's look back at another name we profiled recently on the show. This was back on the August 7th, easy for me to say, August 7th episode. We talked about some pretty size upside love here in Extended Stay America, ticker symbol STAY. They closed today, had a good day today, up about 3.3%, closing right around $19.60. This is the name that does about 1,000 contracts a day and pretty much did that today. Pretty much all of that in the calls. It did 1,168 contracts today, 1,161 in the calls, 7 in the puts for a whopping 166 to 1 puts over calls. But we're not talking about today's activity. No, we're talking about the activity back on August 7th when we saw paper coming in and just loading up on a ton of these SEP 20s. We saw a massive block going up nearly 8,000. Paper buying them for a little bit north of 50 cents. A lot of these went up out of sequence, so they were a little bit funky on that front, but pretty much the lion's share of these did appear to be open in buys. There was only 15 contracts open on the strike, so clearly all opening prints. And we thought we'd just check in and see how this bad boy is performing. The stock, like we said, stock has rallied a bit, so these are looking a little bit better now than they were this morning. These things are now 25-cent bid at 35, so you can get out for roughly half of his money now. This morning, he could pretty much only get a dime bid on these things. So this nice little move has helped. And the 20 strike getting a little bit more in the rear view again. That's the magic of gamma. You get closer to expiration, these things start rocking and rolling a little bit. But on the flip side, he still is down. He's down about 50% on this trade right now. So we like to profile these and also like to check back in on them every now and then because, size money, as you said many times on the show, is not always the smart money. Just because someone bought 20,000 or whatever of these upside calls doesn't mean they're right. They could have other axes to grind. They could just be wrong on the timing. They could be wrong on the sentiment. They could be wrong on all of the above. So it's worth pointing out, again, he still has time on these as well. These don't go out till the 20th, so he's got a few more weeks here. But again, the magic of time decay working against our friend here once again on these upsides. Anything to add here, Mr. Meatball? Yet again, time decay, not exactly our man here's friend. Even though he's looking a little better today, these things he's now lowered his loss to only 50% as opposed to about 70 or 80% where it was this morning.
You know, my gut says that this guy's going to end up winning. This is such a trade by appointment stock, and so little of it goes up. He was either hedging some sort of weird short, or this guy is a smart customer, or he's a dumb customer. My guess is, just based on the flow, he's a smart customer. Maybe I end up being wrong, but my gut says that this guy ends up making a pretty penny on these. I don't know. It just seems too trade by appointee and huge for this guy to just eat it.
I don't know, Mr. Tubster, are you on board with that? And also, if you want, I mean, that notion that I kind of just mentioned to our listeners of these prints going up out of sequence, that could be kind of a bit of a foreign concept to some of our listeners. Walk us through why a big trade like this would sometimes these things go up out of sequence like that.
Certainly a lot of times you may have multiple sellers on a trade, and in some cases, depending on the size breakdown, which I don't have in front of me, but these also could be recommended trades. So you'll see a lot of people coming in with 10 and 15 and 20 lots. I'm kind of with Mark, but I bet that rating is probably pretty close to 50-50, whether those are winners or losers when you get recommended type trades like that. There's no earnings to speak of. The stock was pretty much a dead loser 4 days ago. It has gone from 18.5 to 19.5, a little above that now. But I think we talked about it being a little strange a couple weeks ago when we did the show, and I'm kind of not with Mark on this one. I'm gonna say he probably ends up losing on this one. But this is generally one of those ones you'll see on Twitter where someone's talking about it, and then you'll start seeing multiple 10 and 15 lots start trading after the fact because it is such a low traded name.
There you go. Do me a favor, Tubby. Check the chat here while we're going to keep on rolling right on into. It's Thursday. It means it's time for Uncle Mike to take the reins and head on into the strategy block.
It's time to dispense options, wit, wisdom, and education. It's time for the strategy block.
All right, listeners, it's Thursday. You guys know what that means. It's time for Uncle Mike to dispense some options, wit, and or wisdom. Sometimes we'll take both. We're not greedy, though. We'll take one or the other. He alluded to that he was going to talk maybe a little bit of some silver adjustments, or maybe he's got something else on his brain. We shall see. Uncle Mike, what you got in store for us today, sir?
This is just kind of the spot in the show where I make the host nervous because he never knows what's ever going to happen in this part of the show. I could talk about anything from option trading to WWF wrestling to cartoons to baseball rivalries. He just never knows.
I'm down for WWF wrestling. It's the only wrestling I know. I don't know any of the new WWE, but the old WWF days, I can hang on that. Junkyard Dog, Hulk Hogan, I can do that.
We'll have to exchange. We'll have to have a good exchange someday on the show. Maybe we should have an 80s WWF special one day. I would definitely love to be on that if you ever had it.
That would be great. We could all maybe for one of our live shows we could all dress up as our favorite 80s WWE character. I would be, of course, Randy Macho Man Savage.
Oh yeah,
very much in keeping. Uncle Mike would be Hacksaw Jim Duggan. Do they still have an Ultimate Warrior costume? That's who I'd have to go to as, obviously.
I don't know that I think the Ultimate Warrior would be none of us. But
no doubt.
I was gonna put you down. Yeah, you could definitely be Jim Duggan would be a good one for you. But maybe Jim. Maybe
Neidhart.
Yeah, no. Who am I thinking of? Not Jim Duggan.
Uncle Mike, I think you're the $1 Million Man, Ted DiBiase. That would be you.
Oh, Big Bad John. Big Bad whatever. I forget his name. Oh well. Anyway.
All right. Now with that, we'll transition from the WWF into the beloved call spread. I want to go over a couple of actual trades I did over the last couple days. We actually had a rally on August 29th, a couple days ago. And on that date, what we were able to do is I I sold a call at the close on that day. Now, this is to kind of go against a long call that I already have. This is in the speculative section of the portfolio that's bullish, that we combine and for clients in our simulated index concept, which we've talked about on the show before. But with this, we have a rally. And so the long call that we have, we want to sell some premium against it. And so oftentimes what people will do is they will say, oh, okay, the market's up. Well, let's sell a call. Well, that's tough to do. And the reason I think it's easy to do, I guess, clicking a button isn't that hard to do. But what's tough about it is that when markets rally, in theory, volatility goes lower. And so what you're then doing is you're capping off your upside with an option that is, in theory, lower in implied volatility. It's not quite the same as when the market goes down, you sell a put because volatility is higher, you're getting a better price for the put, and you're bullish anyway. You're not getting the same effect when the market's up and you sell a call. But with that being said, as markets go higher, the long call that I had is gaining more deltas due to the gamma that's involved in it. So I'm taking on a greater and greater position as the markets go higher. In other words, there's more to lose. So how do you take some deltas off the table if the market does go higher? Well, a lot of times the first response is to say, well, let's just sell a covered call. Well, I have a hard time not saying that that's the wrong thing to do, because I actually did do that today with something further out of the money. But what I did today, or on August 29th, is I sold the August 30 245 call. But at the same time, I actually bought the 245 half call, and this is on SPY. And so I was able to get a 25-cent credit for that, and markets closed at roughly 245 on the day. Now, with that, you might say, well, good gosh, Mike, why are you doing that for 25 cents? Well, it's one day, and it's one of those things to where I was able to take some deltas off the table. Now, the following day, right at the open, I wanted to be bullish the market going into the day. I mean, who doesn't want to be a bull in the stock market at any point in time, of course. But with that being said, I didn't want to have that call spread working against me. Now, had the markets gapped up, the S&P gapped up 25 points, well, I'd be cool with that because of the fact that I had the call spread that was sold instead of just the long call. By selling the call spread, I have the ability to participate in upside of the market past the 245 half mark. I sold the call spread for 25 cents, so what I was ultimately risking was 25 cents. And if the markets were to go that much higher, I'd have been totally cool with doing that. Now, that trade worked out okay because a lot of volatility came out of the market from the 29th, overnight from the 29th to the 30th. And the markets went down slightly on the open, but not a lot. But I still wanted to get out of it right away, and I was able to get out of it for 22 cents. Now, that was a whopping break-even trade on it. I was more concerned with an overnight gap down. Not a huge gap down, but if the market started to come down a little bit, I wanted to have something in place. And it was there, and I actually made a whopping 3 pennies on the trade. Now, not exciting by any means, but it's one of those things to where it's a way with which you can take money off the table, take deltas off the table, and still have the ability to maybe get a little bit of premium in and have it not hinder you should the markets continue to go higher. Now, today it didn't quite work out as well. Markets just went screaming up at the open, and I did the same thing last night, did the 246 half call. Very happy lost about 30 cents on the trade in doing the same thing, but markets were higher, and I had the 246 half call in place for the markets to enjoy the markets going higher on. It was a way with which I took some deltas off the table, and it was one where I actually had a little bit of theta, not a ton of theta. I'm in it more for the negative delta than I am the theta. But the thing I want to mention is that if you have a stock that you just want to maybe take a little bit off the table after it has a big rally or a long call, and you're still bullish on it for a longer period of time, but you just kind of want a way to just take a little bit off instead of selling some shares or selling a call if you don't have hundreds and hundreds of calls in your account like I do for the groups that I'm trading. This is another way with which to do it to scale out a little bit. The other way with which I would like to do as well, which I have done, and I would like to add to this that you can do is you can do a time decay neutral type of trade. So let's say, for example, that SPY was trading at 246.25 at the close yesterday. If you can get it to the point to where you're actually either buying a put spread or selling a call spread for 25 cents at that point in time for the 50-cent gap, you're making it so that if the market stays the same, in theory, you're not going to lose anything. But if the market moves your way, goes the other way, it's a way of taking a little bit off the table. So with that being said, I present with the call spread as a way of taking deltas off the table. And I'm trying to think of a good wrestler to, you know what, I'll just go with Hacksaw Jim Duggan. Ho!
I was confused there for a little bit. I didn't know how you're going to bring in, I was waiting for the Junkyard Dog, but I'll take Hacksaw. He's good as well. All right, with our 80s WWF, not E. Who cares about E? F cast in the rearview mirror. Let's keep on rolling. Got a little bit of time here, so let's get some of you guys on the show. Maybe give us your wrestling impressions as we open up the mail block.
It's time to take your seat on the All-Star panel as we read your emails, tweets, Facebook messages, website comments, and much more. It's time for the mail block.
All right, everybody, welcome to our mail block here, portion of the show where you guys take the reins, questions, comments, insights, pearls of wisdom, insults, ass to the meatball, all of the above are allowed. Keep them family friendly on the old mail block. By the way, just as an aside, I haven't consumed wrestling in many decades now. Can it ever really surpass the heyday that is the 80s? I don't think so. That's a good thought question for the week. How are you ever going to beat things like Junkyard Dog and Ultimate Warrior? Nothing today. People like The Rock, but he's no Macho Man Randy Savage or Ultimate Warrior, shall we say. But I digress. Let's get into the question that's burning up your guys' brains here today. You guys can't get enough of our cheapy lottery ticket question, so we'll pay off more of that, see how the votes have evolved this week. Remember back on Monday we asked you guys, hey, let's all get cheap. If you had to buy cheapy, quote, lottery ticket calls, December calls, for a nickel, in one name, which of these four would you choose? We gave you four choices at Amazon, Apple, Tesla, or the old fear index. And by the way, a lot of you guys have asked what their strikes are, so we did the math for you. These were as of Monday. I'm thinking they haven't changed too much since then. For VIX, the closest nickel strike was the D70s. Apple, it was the DEES 235s. Amazon, you can't really get there with a listed DEES option. The closest you can get is the 1420s. That's as high as they go for DEES, and they're about a dime bid. So let's just say for the sake of argument, we can get the 1420s for a nickel, and we'll leave it there. And then Tesla, you got to go all the way up to the 610. So if you hit those, our strangle friend from before will be very happy. He'll be a very happy camper. So you got to go pretty far out. So there you go. There's all the math. There's all the numbers. Mr. Tubby, I don't think you've had a chance to weigh in on this one. Of these four, you got to buy a DEES call for a nickel in one of them. Which one are you picking? And then also, secondarily, what do you think our audience is picking?
Well, you stole my thunder with our strangle friend. He'd probably be picking Tesla. I don't think VIX has a prayer getting to these 70s. I'd love to see it get to half of that. I'm going to go with Amazon. I think that probably still has the most upside and can make that sort of short-term move, although I don't think any of them do it. And I'm going to guess that Amazon's probably going to be the listener's pick as well.
There you go. 2 votes for Amazon here on the old show. By the way, we have, who is this? Robbie Rob writing in. He agrees with you, Tubby. He says he wants Amazon for Christmas shopping. So there you go. 3 votes there for Amazon. Mr. Uncle Mike, I forgot what you said. I think you picked Apple because you're still the hardcore Apple guy here on the show. Are you still leaning Apple? And then what do you think our audience is leaning? Has the voting evolved since Monday?
I'm still going to go with Apple and Apple. Of all those, of any of those freakish moves that could happen, if Apple comes out with the next truly innovating thing for the Christmas season, I think that has the best chance of doing some type of freakish move like this. So I'm going with Apple because they're going to come out with the Well, so I don't know.
Apple. She got 2 votes for Apple. So, okay, you and the audience both going for Apple. Okay, interesting. And last but not least, Mr. Meatball, you like to play in the VIX realm, so I think you weighed in on the VIX camp on Monday, or maybe I've been Rock Lobster on the show on Monday, in which case I think he weighed in on VIX. But what are you picking? Are you going to go the same way as your work wife there, or you got a different pick in store for us?
No. So does it have to end up in the money, or is it just which ones am I most likely to make money on? Because here's what I can tell you is you only need for the 70 calls in VIX to get time or 15. All you need is a nice heat up in October or November of VIX getting to 30 or 25. And the future will be worth a quarter like that. So, that is a one of the things I would point out is that I think that now if it's in the money, then VIX is completely no way. I think the VIX has settled above 70 once or never. Is it once or?
It's been once.
Mark. I hope it's settled above it though.
I thought it settled 67 that day when it got up to. Yeah, so I think see VIX get settle there, but if all we're trying to do is make money on the calls, you got your best odds with those VIX calls.
Yeah, you can read it either way. You can read it as going in the money, which is obviously a bit more of a longer road to hoe, or you can go as making money. I think anyone will take a Dublin on those bad boys here in the old show here. And let's check in, see how our listeners. I remember earlier in the week it was pretty much all VIX all the time. I think they were over 40% of the voting. A lot more votes have flooded in since then. It's still VIX. In fact, it was lower this morning. I guess it looks like some late votes have surged in during the show because VIX is back up to about 39%. It was a little bit lower in the 30s earlier today. So more love for VIX. 39% saying VIX. A tie for number 2 between the two A's, Amazon and Apple, both at a distant 22%. And bringing up the rear, which is unusual for this name. Good old Tesla bringing up the rear, only 17%. You guys got about a day or two left. It goes out. I think it goes out on Saturday, so you got Friday and a little bit of Saturday left. So if you haven't voted, I know a lot of you already have. But if you haven't voted, or you got multiple accounts, you want to vote twice to drive those VIXs down, whatever the case may be, go ahead, go for it. We shall allow it, and we'll pay off the final voting there. Well, you guys clearly like your cheapy options here. All right, moving on. Let's see. We got a bunch here. Saving this one for the Rock Lobster because he asked for it specifically about the spreads. So we won't get into that one. Here's a perennial question we get a lot. I guess it's the end of earnings season. It's worth reminding people. This comes from the Bobster. I like that handle. He says, can you trade options outside of U.S. trading hours? Obviously, this is a bit of a loaded question. It kind of depends what options you're talking about. You're talking about standard, listed equity options. You're talking index options, futures options, what product, etc. They all have different schedules, different time frames. But let's, for the sake of argument, let's keep it to what we usually talk about here, which are your standard listed equity and index options. Mr. Tubster, you've been, the schedules pretty well these days. Why don't you, at least you used to, until now you're retired, maybe all that info has flooded from your brain. But what do you have to say to our friend here, Mr. Bobster? Fill him in. When can he get his hands on some options these days?
I have drained my brain from some of these. I'm pretty certain you can trade VIX and SPX after hours, but I'm not quite sure what kind of account you would need to do that. I'm not quite sure you can have a retail account and do that, and I could be wrong. That's probably a better question for Mark. Do you know about that?
Yeah, you need to get approved, but by like your platform, but then you can.
Okay. So it's pretty simple process, I guess, right?
Yeah, there's a process to it. Now, the futures options, it's way easier. All you need to do is be futures enabled, and then you can trade ES all night. So their futures options trade almost 24/7 electronically, but index and equity options. Equity options, there's no way to do it. Index options, there are, but you got to go through a couple hoops.
Yep, there you go. Mr. Tubster, you haven't forgotten as much as you say. You're right. You see, SIBO has pretty much added those extended hours. Those are your best bet for the late night hours. They realized a lot of things were popping off in the European time zone, Brexit and what have you out there, and so people wanted to trade those. So they added those extended hours, so that's your best bet for SPX and VIX, and you're right, Mark. On the futures options side, you got a lot more to play with. It's one of the reasons people like the futures options. Talk about that a lot on our TWIFO program, of course. You can pretty much get almost 24/7 access on the lion's share of those products out there. So if that is something that is important to you, and we know this comes up a lot during earnings season, you guys always write into us. I bought calls on Google, I bought puts on Amazon, whatever the case may be. And of course, the underlying moved in your favor in the after hours, and by the time it opened up the next morning, it opened up unched, and you write to us because you're angry. First off, we're not your broker or the exchange. Write to them if you want after-hours trading. It's really the exchanges you got to convince. A lot of them, I've asked them this question for years. In fact, I've kind of stopped asking them because I would take their pulse every year at the big OIC conference of all the heads of the exchanges, and it seemed like there was just no interest in really adding those extended hours. I know when we said the Viceroy on the show, he used to be a vocal proponent, like I am pretty much, of having a little bit more liquidity. The counterpoint to that is, of course, it won't be that liquid. You'll have an ability to get out, but it'll be pretty much an RFQ kind of listed order book kind of thing, as opposed to a deep and liquid market that we have right now. But on the flip side, I kind of argued that some liquidity maybe is better than none. Others will take the other side of that, and clearly that side is winning right now because we don't have extended hours, at least for your Apples and your Googles and your Facebooks out there. Maybe there's argument. Some people have talked about a limited pilot to perhaps something during earnings season for specific names that are coming off and is limited to the week before or after earnings, something along those lines. That may be how it eventually takes shape here in the option space. But for now, unfortunately, Mr. Bobster, we've got nothing, at least outside of those names we listed there. All right. Let's see. We got a bunch of kind of subjective questions coming in today. Here's one. Nanfran, good old Nanfran. I like that. He or she asking, what do you think would be a good option to buy? She's a premium buyer. What would be a good option to buy right now, heading into the end of summer? We're pretty much at the end of summer, so we're kind of there. But yeah, this is kind of traditionally a time, end of August, getting into September. Usually this is the time when things get a little bit more active. The markets go from being a little bit lighter and thinner to being a little bit more active, a little bit more volume. So it's an interesting time. Maybe sometime people also often equate, this is usually, we haven't seen it this month, this is usually also a period of kind of the doldrums of volatility for the year. Certainly August hasn't been that for us this year. Fire and Fury and a few other things helping to alleviate that. But this is usually the time of the year, he's mentioning, where things start to get a little bit more active, a little bit more juicy. Mr. Uncle Mike, maybe we'll start with you. What do you have to say here for our friend, Mr. or perhaps Mrs. Nanfran? He wants to buy something, and he wants to do it right now.
He wants to buy something, and he wants to do it right now. Well, when is it ever not a good time to buy something is what I always say.
Yeah. Says the bull. I love it.
So no, I think that what I would look for, next week is when I think we're going to have a little bit more I think we'll have a lot more volume in the marketplace. And in terms of what to buy and what to buy right now, a couple things that are on my radar right now. If you have the stomach to handle a little bit more volatility, if you're looking to buy something over the course of the next 5 years, I love XLE right now to buy more of it. I think that it's down in value, but if you want to get some exposure to energy, I think over the long term, I do like energy at this point in time. A little bit of a pullback in financials right now. So XLF, I think, would look somewhat attractive. But once again, I'm looking at this to like a 1 to 5 year holding period, at least on XLF. In terms of the market itself, if we make a new all-time high and you can handle being a momentum trader and you want to just buy the high and let it ride higher, if that's your goal, so to speak, then you might get your opportunity come next week.
And I hate to break it to you, Uncle Mike, on your beloved XLE. There's currently no bid for your beloved 30 puts, so you can't blast out any more of those bad boys. No more. I think you have the 70 puts. Also, you wanted an Apple. Not a lot of love for those either. So all your put strikes, is not looking too good. So Uncle Mike liking some XLEs. He's getting long term in the commodities these days. 2 years in silver, 5 years out there in XLE, which is of course an energy ETF. Listeners, if you're not familiar with it, so getting a little bit longer term on us, Uncle Mike. Mr. Tubster, you're probably a little bit more close to home, a little bit more close to the fire. If you had an option you wanted to buy right now here, coming into the tail end of summer, getting into a little bit more liquid, a little bit more active time of year, what would you counsel our friend Mr. or Mrs. Nanfran?
Well, I'd probably buy the Tesla D610 call.
How did I know you were going to say that? How did I know?
I'm still beating the same drum I was a couple weeks ago. I'm buying retail. I think it's way overdone, and I think it's overdone because they're blaming the Amazons of the world. This is a great time. Christmas season starts so much earlier than it used to, so you're going to capture some of that in these next quarter earnings. I would be a buyer of some of these stocks that have been really beaten up on the retail side. And I would not be buying XRT. Mark Sebastian and I talked about this a couple weeks ago. I of all the ETFs, which I really, really like as a way to get into a sector, I just don't think this one's put together real well with great retail names. So if I wanted to do something like that, I may just buy a collection of stocks that I like. And one theory I hear from a lot of people is look at what your kids are watching and wearing.
Your kids are your wife.
Money.
Your kids are your wife.
Your wife.
So, which is why you like Lulu. I mean, you were the case in point. We were talking.
Yeah.
Part of the reason you like Lulu is because your wife Amy wears it all the time, and
she works from home. She doesn't have to get dressed up for work every day. That's perfect for her.
Yeah. So you hear it, folks. Matt Benson saying buy Sears Holding Corp. That you heard it here first, folks.
Say that. Unless they bring Pumpkins back.
The beloved Shield.
Yeah.
Did you have a name for the Nanfran here, Mr. Mark?
What to go long, or
yes.
What to go short, or what to trade?
I'm guessing you're just going to say you want to get some VIX futures, maybe some calls on the upside. You love your upside calls.
Can't lose there. I don't know if you guys have taken a look at Alibaba, but that thing has just been parabolic higher. That's a name I like, and I actually like kind of near Matt's point. I like Home Depot a lot. They have been cleaning up on earnings. They're kicking the crud out of Lowe's, and really, when you need hardware and equipment, it's very difficult to do that online. So I think they're a little bit Amazon bulletproof, and I think that this is a name that could hit new ATHs this year along with the market. It's going to be a market leader for the rest of the year.
Speaking of Amazon and retail, I took my first foray into an Amazon Foods today. It was kind of weird.
How was that?
It was kind of weird seeing the Echo there next to the soft cheeses and everything else that they sell there. So a little bit of a culture clash going on. I think they'll get it all sorted out. Hey, if they lower prices, that's a good thing for maybe not for the shareholders, but certainly a good thing for people who go there to buy their overpriced cheeses and everything else they have on the menu. Of course, that's it for us here on the old mail block, but we got a little bit more time left to squeeze in our final segment. It's time for Around the Block.
It's time to tell you what we'll be watching on our trading screens until the next episode. It's time for Around the Block.
All right, everybody, welcome to Around the Block. Let's check back in one more time with our friend there at the top of the show, Lululemon. They of the sheer yoga pants. And like I said, they were pricing in a fairly hefty, almost $7, $6.75, and they were moving pretty good. They were up, that's about 12%. They were moving about 7% or so at the top of the show. That's come off a bit, only up about 5% now. So only up about $3 or so, not even there in the after hours. So a little bit of that early love, maybe some of that bloom coming off the rose, but still up for all you fans out there of the see-through pants. That said, let's start in Uncle Mike territory. Uncle Mike, what do you want? Aside from your multi-year commodity trades, what else you got on the radar for the rest of this week, sir? And of course, going into the long holiday week, because we won't be around on Monday.
That's a good point. We won't be able to speak to each other for another week. It's very sad along those lines. But just watching with bated breath for the potential for a new all-time high. Excited about that. And the other thing that, not to steal any of the meatballs thunder, but we might have a single-digit VIX if we have an update tomorrow. So looking at those two things primarily.
That might be interesting for our predictions there on the crystal ball. Stay tuned till tomorrow, listeners, to see how we all collectively humiliate ourselves chasing the mercurial pig that is the VIX. All right, speaking of VIX, let's go to and mercurial pigs. Let's go to the meatball, Mr. Mark Sebastian. What are you watching for the rest of this and into the beginning of next holiday week, sir?
You know, we continue to see the spread between the cash index and the futures be incredibly wide. And so I am wary of continued low vol right now. We've got non-farm tomorrow. I'm going to pay attention to that. And then Congress comes back next week, which means debt ceiling talk, which means maybe a little bit of fear. Get engaged.
A little bit of fear, you're right. VIX continues to tick up. More votes pulling in for VIX in our poll. Up to 40% now from the mid-30s earlier today. So people listening to the show and decided they liked themselves more VIX, so they're loading up on VIX in our poll. We'll see if those D70s are looking juicy, but let's go around the horn to our final name here, our final victim in the old Around the Block. Mr. Tubster, what are you watching for the rest of this week and, of course, into the beginning of next week in the holiday session?
Yeah, not much going in tomorrow. Non-farm will probably just be it. We'll probably be quiet by 10 o'clock Eastern time or so, 10 or 11. I expect the market to be up. I expect VIX to be coming in. Next week, I think we could be looking at new highs. I'm not as concerned with the debt ceiling at this point because my gut is with Harvey being what it is. I think that would be a really poor move on our government's part to shut down the government. So I'm thinking that's off the table. I'm thinking the wall's off the table. And I'm thinking we're probably going to be seeing some heavier volume up moves starting in the next week.
All right, thank you for that. Mr. Tubby. There's the music. Gotta have the music, otherwise you can't end the show on the right note without the music. Unintended. All right, that's going to do it for the Around the Block. It's also going to do it for this episode of the Option Block. But before we go, as usual, let's go back around the horn the way we came and see what they're up to that may interest you. Mr. Tubster, you got anything cooking, anything in the works that may interest? Or maybe they want to come by the pool in the house and check you out. Where should they go? What should they do?
Well, yeah, maybe we should have a show here. Yeah, I've been beating this all day. I'm looking at retailers, but I'm also kind of keeping my eye on a fun little stock, MGTI. If anyone's looking at Bitcoin and hasn't quite figured out how to jump into Bitcoin or other ways, this might be a little interesting, fun play. You may not get rich, you may lose some money, but it's kind of a fun little stock to play around in.
MGTI trading a whopping $3.14. Not too fun today, Mr. Tubby. Got knocked off 20% today. So hopefully...
Down 20%?
Yeah, down 20% today. Off 81 cents today.
But up from 90 cents 2 months ago.
Oh, well, there you go. So there you go. I guess it's all about frame of reference, right?
Yep.
So don't buy it this morning. Buy it now, and it's looking a lot better. MGTI, interesting one. We like our cheapies here on the old Odd Block. And Mr. Uncle Mike, let's say I was so inclined, instead I wanted to save that $3 I would normally spend on a ticket charge so I could buy one share of MGTI. Where could I go to do such a thing?
You can buy several shares of MGTI with what typical ticket charges are, but that's another story. At RCM, we do have a program to where if you want to be a self-directed trader under the RCM umbrella at one of the brokers with whom we have a relationship, we do. And feel free to contact me about that if you can possibly save some money. And also, what is your advisor doing right now with the all-time highs? That's the other question that I have. For a lot of you that separate option trading and long-term investing, that's fine, but what are you doing right now to do the all-time highs? And if your advisor says nothing and that concerns you, give me a call. I'm happy to work with you in any way possible to discuss it. 312-212-3531. Or shoot me an email at mtosaw@rcmfs.com.
And I'll also be happy to have a heated discourse with you listeners about 80s WWF versus modern day WWE and which is superior. I think we know which camp he falls into. And last but not least, another fan of the 80s wrestling and also Greasy Meatballs, Mr. Mark Sebastian. I hear you guys have something cooking. What is cooking over there in the Option Pit Kitchen, sir?
Well, I'm doing a webinar tonight, so go on Twitter and you can. I just posted the link, and we were going to be having a class on the 14th on directional option trading. You can go to optionpit.com/direction to find some direction on your directional options trading.
So if they're listening live right now, they can head on over to Option Pit, and the link is there to check out the webinar.
It's on Twitter. All
right, follow him.
Go to add Option Pit.
There you go. Follow him at Option Pit there, listeners. You can get the link. Maybe we'll retweet it here for you. Two, so if you're listening live and you haven't had enough of the meatball, you want to get a little bit more, then you can go head on over and check out the webinar. And on behalf of the meatball and the Tubster and Uncle Mike, and indeed myself, I want to thank all of you out there in the listening audience for downloading, streaming, subscribing. Of course, for you hardcores who tune in live, we love you guys too. And we won't see you on Monday, unfortunately. A little bit of a breather for us and for the markets, but we'll be back here next week for more of the Option Block.
The preceding program was a production of the Options Insider Radio Network. For more quality options programs, visit www.theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app, available in iTunes and on Google Play. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com.